All right, everybody, what is going on? Good afternoon. Hope you guys are doing well. And we've got a little bit of Seahawks news to talk about today. First, though, let me just say if you guys didn't get the opportunity to catch the stream that I did with Brandon of the Hawks Nest earlier today, definitely check out the VOD. Should be live on both of our channels by now. If not, it will be shortly. We talk about offensive free agents the team might want to target this offseason. We are just about a week and a half away from free agency, so this stuff is very topical, very interesting. Definitely go give it a listen if you didn't watch earlier. All right. So we got some news yesterday from Mike Macdonald himself, and it concerns one of the Seahawks' young players that most of us are pretty excited about. I saw this all over the place yesterday, but this is Seahawks Wired tweeting it out. Wide receiver slash kick returner, more punt returner, but whatever. Tory Horton, who's recovering from a shin injury he suffered in November, will not participate in any work during the spring, per head coach Mike Macdonald. So, pretty significant. All right, everybody, before we go any further into this video, I want to take a minute to tell you guys about the Sleeper app and some new functionality they've recently rolled out, Team Picks. With Team Picks, you can pick winners in all kinds of sporting events. Right now, we have NBA basketball, college basketball, NHL hockey is going on, baseball's going to start in a little more than a month, and of course, you have futures in the NFL, even though the games in the NFL are over. Right now, if you look to my left here, you can actually see you can bet on next year's Super Bowl winner. They've got the Seahawks leading the way in those odds, by the way, at 12%. How does that make you feel as a Seahawks fan? But you can bet on MVP, you can bet on draft picks, you can bet on player destinations, all kinds of fun stuff, even though the season is over. So that is Team Picks over on Sleeper. A lot of fun stuff you can do. So just to kind of recount here, Tory Horton got hurt in November, I think after the Commanders game, and he was initially assumed to be working through something that was relatively minor, and it was believed he was going to be back in a couple of weeks at that point, I believe. It was projected to be an injury that they didn't even initially put him on injured reserve, I think. They waited a few weeks to put him on injured reserve. Then eventually they did put him on injured reserve, but there was an indication that he would be back for the postseason. And then they got to the postseason, and then they ended up saying, well, no, he's not going to be back. He's actually going to miss the entirety of the season. So he ended up missing what, 3 months basically at the end of the year, something like that. And now we're being told that he's still not going to be doing anything into spring. So that's another several months on top of it. So, first of all, that's just generally alarming, right? Because an injury that we were told would be relatively manageable and something that he would work through in what was implied to be less than a month is now something that he's not even able to work through after what we're going to be ending up somewhere around 6 months before this is all over. And they say he's not participating in any work during the spring. So, forget about playing football. That implies he's not going to be able to do anything that requires physical, strenuous type labor. So, Tory Horton, for one, the injury he had, I guess, was a lot more significant than initially thought, or it exposed something with him that was a lot more serious than initially thought. And remember, Tory Horton was a player that lost most, or yeah, I would call it most of his final year in college at Colorado State to a knee injury. So Tory Horton has already shown that he may be kind of just a chronically injured player. And now we're looking at this where an injury that initially looked relatively tame ended up becoming something that has basically, or will basically, by the time this is over, cost him half a year of not being able to do any work. Forget on-field work, just work in general is the implication. So, the reason why I'm saying all this, the reason why I'm talking about all this, obviously, on the face of it, this is a bummer for a young player who needs this time, right? Tory Horton needs this time to work on his game, but beyond that, as a team, I think this does kind of emphasize the fact that we cannot depend on Tory Horton going forward. He's on the team. He's going to get the opportunity to heal up and be better. And obviously, there's a lot of time between now and the first game. But I think we can now safely conclude that depending on Tory Horton and just assuming he's going to be there for you is a mistake. And this team needs to move forward under the assumption that Tory Horton's going to be battling issues like this indefinitely until he can prove for an extended period of time that he's not. So obviously, most Seahawks fans, myself included, like Horton a lot. They're excited about what he can bring. But with the way things are going right now, the unfortunate reality of the situation is that we cannot be sitting here thinking we don't have to worry about this or that or the other thing because Horton is coming back. As of right now, I would go forward assuming that Horton will be hampered his sophomore year. If nothing else, the fact that he's not able to do work during the spring is going to limit his growth as a player and probably limit what we can expect from him in 2026. So we're going to have conversations in the coming week and a half leading up to free agency. And we've already had a lot of these conversations. And of course, during free agency, we're going to have a lot to say about this kind of stuff. Tory Horton, if he's not going to be there for you, if you can't count on him, and like I just said, I don't think you can. I don't think it's a good idea to sit there and assume that Tory Horton is going to be a dependable number 3 or number 2 or even number 4 receiver for you. What do you then do in free agency? Because obviously we all know Rashid Shaheed is a free agent. Maybe this changes your mentality around keeping Rashid Shaheed around. Maybe Jake Bobo. Maybe things change a little bit with your perception of keeping Jake Bobo. Derek Young. Derek Young is another player who's a free agent. So that's why this weighs kind of heavily. We have a lot of free agent receivers this offseason, and Shaheed's obviously the big one, but a lot of the depth on this team is also eligible to leave. And I don't think Bobo's going to leave because he's restricted, and I don't think there's going to be a big market for him. If you want to retain Derek Young, you can. But the point I'm trying to make here is that there may need to be a bigger investment into the receiver spot than we initially thought because all the evidence we're getting indicates that Horton is not a dependable option for this team for at least the immediate future. Maybe a year or two from now, we'll be able to look at it and go, okay, we can now trust that Horton's going to be there for us because he's stayed upright for a season or two. But it sure seems like he's going to be one of those guys that battles through physical issues. Now, hopefully, the hope is that this ends up being like Ernest Jones. Ernest Jones was a guy who battled injuries throughout the early part of his career, but then he finally got surgery last offseason, and he basically said, I believe that the surgery I just had will allow me to move past the issues I've had and become much more reliably on the field in future seasons. So maybe it'll be like that, where this injury and the treatment he's getting for it and the surgery he's getting will just kind of resolve these issues. But as of right now, it's looking like Horton is going to be one of those guys that you hope he's there for you, but it's not a big surprise if he's not there for you. All right, so that is the latest. Looks like we're looking at a longer timetable on Horton than anybody could have expected. Again, like this implies 6 months or so of not being able to do stuff because of the injury, and that's tough. That's concerning. We'll see where this goes, but I do think it has to make you reconsider things a little bit this offseason. All right, see you guys later. Go Hawks.